Welcome back to Red Sox Focus, everybody. The Boston Red Sox have their home opener in the win column, and it feels good to be able to say that. After a difficult first week and a half on the road, the Red Sox returned to Fenway Park, put together a complete performance, and took care of business against the San Diego Padres. Today, we are going to break down everything that happened, the win, what it means, and what we saw from both the pitching staff and the offense. But before we get to the game recap, we need to talk about the roster moves that took place yesterday, because there were 4 of them, and one in particular carries some real significance for this pitching staff going forward. Let us get into it. The roster moves 4 roster transactions were made yesterday, and we are going to run through all of them, starting with the one that matters most. Johan Oviedo has been placed on the injured list with a right elbow strain, and this is the move that deserves the most attention. The reporting around this situation from Tim Healy indicated that Oviedo is set to meet with Dr. Keith Meister regarding his elbow. For those who may not be familiar with that name, Alex Cora confirmed that Dr. Meister was the surgeon who performed Oviedo's Tommy John surgery back in December of 2023. The fact that Oviedo is being directed back to the same specialist who handled his previous elbow procedure is not something to be taken lightly. That is not a routine maintenance visit. That is the organization being appropriately cautious about a situation that has the potential to be serious. The velocity concerns were already present. When Oviedo took the mound in Houston earlier in the week, his fastball was noticeably down, and that registered as a red flag at the time. Now, with the IL placement and the specialist visit confirmed, it appears that what initially might have seemed like a cautionary move is something more legitimate. Oviedo spoke after the game and said, through reporting from Chris Cotillo, that he did not experience pain during the outing itself, but woke up a couple of days later unable to fully bend or extend his arm. He is awaiting the results of MRI imaging and will meet with Dr. Meister to determine next steps. We will monitor this situation closely, but the early indicators are not encouraging, and the Red Sox will need to manage accordingly. It is also worth acknowledging the context here. Connolly Early had been pitching his way into a rotation spot throughout spring training, and there was already a reasonable case to be made that Oviedo was going to be looking at a return to AAA at some point in the near term, regardless of the injury. But this changes the nature of that situation entirely. If Oviedo is dealing with something structural in that elbow, the timeline becomes far less predictable, and the Red Sox will need internal options to cover his spot in the roster construction. That brings us to the call-up that fills his vacancy. Tyler Uberstine, currently ranked as the number 15 prospect in the Boston Red Sox system, according to MLB Pipeline. In 2025, Uberstine pitched 120 2/3 innings, posting an ERA of 3.58 with 137 strikeouts against 41 walks and a WHIP of 1.26. His scouting profile is not built around an overpowering fastball. He is not going to blow hitters away with pure velocity. What he does well is command the strike zone, sequence effectively through a quality arsenal, and limit hard contact. He projects as a back-end starter or long reliever at the big league level, which is essentially the role Oviedo was filling. He did not pitch in yesterday's game, but he should see action at some point during this series, likely in a multi-inning relief capacity. Getting to be part of the Fenway home opener festivities as a newly promoted major leaguer is a moment he will remember, and it will be worth watching how he handles his first exposure to a big league environment. The third move was the return of Zack Kelly from AAA. Kelly was one of the final cuts before opening day and is back in the bullpen now with a clear need for additional arms. He carries significantly more major league experience than Uberstine, and the expectation is that Kelly will likely remain on the roster even once the roster situation normalizes. Finally, Garrett Whitlock has been placed on the paternity list as he and his family welcome a new child. Congratulations to the Whitlock family on what is a genuinely exciting moment for them. Whitlock will be back with the club shortly, and the expectation is that once he returns, Uberstine will likely be optioned back to AAA given Kelly's experience advantage and the needs of the bullpen at that point. Game recap: Red Sox 5, Padres 2. Now let us talk about the game, because it was genuinely an enjoyable one to watch, not just because of the result, but because of how it came together. The Red Sox had not won since the opening series, so getting a victory on home opener day in front of a packed Fenway Park with the 1986 team on hand for their anniversary celebration was a meaningful moment for this organization and its fan base. The energy was everything you would want from a home opener, and the team delivered a performance that matched it. Starting pitching Sonny Gray was the story on the mound, and he delivered when this rotation needed him to. After a shaky first outing in Cincinnati, Gray settled in and gave the Red Sox 6 innings, allowing 4 hits, 0 walks, and 2 runs while striking out 3 batters. The control was the biggest positive takeaway. Going back to his first start, the walk total was a concern. Yesterday, he eliminated that issue almost entirely, and the only walk surrendered in the entire game came from Aroldis Chapman in the 9th. The 2 runs Gray allowed came in the 5th inning and warrant some context. With 1 out and no runners on base, a routine pop fly to center field was lost in the sun and dropped, extending the inning when it should have ended. That error allowed a Miguel Andujar triple, and Luis Campusano followed with a 2-out RBI double to make it a 2-run frame. Could Gray have escaped without damage regardless? Possibly. But the difference between 1 out with the bases empty and 1 out with a runner on third is a meaningful distinction in terms of the pressure a starting pitcher is managing. The situation changed substantially because of the misplay, and crediting Gray with full responsibility for those runs would be an oversimplification. The broader picture on Gray is one that was always going to require patience and perspective. He is not this rotation's number 1 or number 2 starter. Ranger Suarez occupies that second spot behind Garrett Crochet. Gray's value is as a reliable, durable number 3, a pitcher who goes 6 innings, limits free passes, keeps the score manageable, and gives the bullpen a rest. That is exactly what he did yesterday. His ERA drops to 4.50 after this outing, and it will continue to trend downward as the season progresses and the sample size grows. Yesterday was a step in the right direction. Grade for Gray's outing, B-. The command was sharp, the durability was valuable, and the walk-free performance was encouraging. The inability to escape the 5th without damage keeps it from climbing higher, but this was a solid start overall. Bullpen Greg Weissert, Justin Slatton, and Aroldis Chapman combined for 3 scoreless innings to close out the game. Weissert and Slatton were both perfect in their appearances. Chapman issued a walk in the 9th, but was otherwise dominant. After a difficult stretch for the bullpen to open the season, this was a needed and encouraging collective performance. With Gray going 6, the Red Sox only needed 3 relievers to finish the game, which means this bullpen enters the rest of the series with most of its arms fresh and available. That is an underrated aspect of what Gray's length provided yesterday. Offense. The offense was not perfect, but it was productive enough to get the job done, and there were some genuinely encouraging individual performances worth highlighting. The Red Sox struck out 8 times against Michael King, who is a legitimate major league starting pitcher, so that number carries less alarm than it might against a lesser opponent. Getting through a King start with fewer than 10 strikeouts as a unit is a reasonable outcome. Marcelo Mayer was the offensive standout of the day, and it was not particularly close. Mayer went 2 for 2 with 2 runs scored and 2 RBI, including a double off the Green Monster and a home run that effectively put the game out of reach for San Diego. What made that home run particularly notable was the circumstance under which it occurred. The Padres manager made a deliberate decision to bring in a left-handed reliever specifically to face Mayer, a matchup that has historically been identified as a vulnerability in his offensive profile. Mayer answered by taking that lefty deep. That is not a small moment. That is a young player responding to a tactical challenge and winning the confrontation. Alex Cora mentioned after the game that with 2 runners on base, he likely would have considered pinch hitting for Mayer in that spot, which tells you something about how that left-on-left matchup has been viewed internally. Yesterday's answer may begin to change that conversation. Mayer is now approaching a .300 average on the young season with an OPS north of 1,000. Those numbers will normalize over the course of a full season, but the underlying performance has been genuinely impressive, and he is making a clear case that he belongs on this roster and deserves consistent playing time. Wilson Contreras hit his first home run as a member of the Boston Red Sox yesterday, and fittingly, it went over the Green Monster. Contreras has not been producing a high volume of hits through the early portion of the season, but he has been drawing walks and getting on base at a reasonable clip. The power showed up yesterday in his first game at Fenway, which is an encouraging sign for a player who profiles well in this ballpark given the dimensions. The hope is that the hits follow the walks as he settles into the lineup. Caleb Durbin picked up his first hit of the season, an RBI single that came in the fourth inning, and it was a moment worth acknowledging. Durbin had been hitless through the first 6 games of the year, and the noise around that slow start had been growing louder in the fan base. 6 games is an extraordinarily small sample size by any reasonable analytical standard, and the calls to move on from a player that quickly reflect more impatience than genuine evaluation. Durbin is a legitimate player who earned his spot on this roster. One difficult week does not change that assessment. The RBI single was a meaningful moment for him, and the expectation here is that he will settle into his role as the season progresses. Trevor Story went hitless with a strikeout yesterday, and the early season offensive struggles continue. Story is a player Alex Cora has been committed to hitting in the 2-hole, and at some point, if the production does not materialize, there will need to be a conversation about lineup construction. Repeating the same approach without adjusting when the results are clearly not, there is not a viable long-term strategy. That conversation may still be premature, but it is one to monitor as the season continues. Romy Gonzalez went 1 for 4 on the day. Ceddanne Rafaela went 1 for 3 and drove in what appears to have been the game's first RBI. Jarren Duran went 1 for 4, scored a run, and made a strong catch in left field. William Abreu went 1 for 4 with 2 strikeouts and scored a run. Jorge Narvaez went 1 for 3 with a strikeout. Collectively, the lineup did enough, moved runners, produced timely hits, and generated the power necessary to build a cushion that the pitching staff could protect. Series outlook: the Red Sox take Game 1 of this series and improve to 2 wins on the season. The question now is whether they can carry the momentum and take the series. Fenway Park was a genuine strength for this club last season, and the hope coming into the home schedule was that the comfort of playing in front of the home crowd would help stabilize what had been an inconsistent start to the year on the road. Game 1 provided at least one data point in that direction. The pitching matchups for the remainder of the series will go a long way toward determining the outcome, and the bullpen being fresh after Gray's 6 innings is a significant advantage heading into Game 2. Garrett Crochet's next start is expected to come early next week, and when that day arrives, Red Sox Focus will be live to cover it in real time. So make sure you are subscribed and have notifications turned on so you do not miss it. As always, let us know in the comments below. Do the Red Sox win this series? Drop a Y for yes or an N for no, and tell us what you are thinking. The community discussion is one of the best parts of covering this team daily, and we want to hear your take. Thank you for spending part of your day here at Red Sox Focus. We cover the Boston Red Sox every single day throughout the season, so if you are not already subscribed, now is the time. Hit the like button if you enjoyed today's breakdown. It helps more people find the channel, and it tells us the content is landing. We will see you in the next one.